All right, let's get started. Today, we're going to take a cosmic tour of one of the most stunningly beautiful objects up in the night sky, the Whirlpool Galaxy.
Just look at this. This is Messier 51, M51 for short. And what you're seeing isn't some peaceful, serene island of stars. Oh no, it's more like a cosmic crime scene, a collision happening right before our eyes. It's a gravitational tug-of-war between a huge spiral galaxy and its smaller buddy, a dance that's been shaping and sculpting both of them for hundreds of millions of years.
You know, we've been fascinated by this thing for centuries. It all started back in 1773 when the famous comet hunter Charles Messier just noted it down as another faint, fuzzy patch in the sky. But the real aha moment, that came in 1845. Using a monstrous 72-inch telescope, the biggest in the world back then, Lord Rosse was the very first person to actually draw its incredible spiral shape. And today, well, today we see it in ways he couldn't have even dreamed of.
Okay, so for our first stop on this tour, we need to understand the engine behind all this beauty. And that is the violent, but also incredibly creative, force of a galactic collision.
Meet the culprit. See that smaller, bright blob right there? That's the dwarf galaxy M51b, and astronomers think it has literally punched right through the main galaxy's disk. Not once, but at least twice, sending out these massive shockwaves that have totally reshaped the bigger galaxy.
The physics behind this is something called tidal disruption. And honestly, it's the same basic idea that causes ocean tides here on Earth, just, scaled up to a mind-boggling galactic level. As these two galaxies pull on each other, gravity doesn't just tug, it stretches, it tears, and it literally flings material out into these enormous ghostly streams. And the scale we're talking about is it's staggering. One of these plumes of gas and stars that got thrown out into space during the encounter, it stretches for 140,000 light years. To put that in perspective, that's longer than the diameter of the main galaxy itself.
Okay, let's zoom in now. We're going to move our tour inward to the galaxy's most famous feature, those amazing arms. For more than a century, astronomers have been scratching their heads trying to figure out what they actually are.
And this gets to a really fundamental question in astrophysics. Are these gorgeous arms permanent, fixed structures, kind of like spokes on a wheel that just rotate along with everything else? Or are they something more fleeting, something temporary?
So, there are two main ideas on the table. One is the density wave theory. It suggests the arms are these slow-moving, stable patterns of higher density. Think of them as cosmic traffic jams. Gas and stars flow into them, get squeezed together, and then flow out the other side. The other idea is that they're just temporary features whipped up by all that chaos from the collision with M51b, and that they'll eventually just fade away.
So, how in the world do you solve a mystery like this? Well, you need better data, a lot better. And that is exactly what a project called the PAWS survey gave us. By mapping out all the molecular gas, that's the raw fuel for making new stars, at an incredibly high resolution, astronomers were able to see deep inside the galaxy's structure like never before.
And what they found? Well, it was a total shock. Buried in the data, hidden underneath that classic two-armed pattern that we all see, was the clear signature of a three-armed spiral. Yep, you heard that right. 3 arms. The galaxy is way more complex than it looks, with multiple patterns all overlapping and interacting. It's a huge clue that, hey, maybe both theories are a little bit right.
Now, the structure of these arms isn't just for show. It has a really important job: to create the next generation of stars. So let's zoom in even further on these incredible stellar factories.
And here's what's so cool. The most intense star-making isn't happening in the big main arms themselves. Nope. It's happening in these things called gas spurs. They're these giant offshoots of gas and dust that stick out from the arms, almost like feathers on a bird's wing. These are the real stellar nurseries. And this image right here, it illustrates that point perfectly. It's looking at a very specific wavelength of light called H-alpha, which glows super brightly wherever new, massive stars have just ignited. And look, you can see how these stellar nurseries are just lighting up all along those spurs, like little beacons of creation.
But of course, where you get a lot of life, you are also going to get a lot of death. The massive stars getting churned out in M51, they live fast and they die young, in some of the most violent explosions the universe has to offer.
I mean, just in the last few decades, we've gotten a front row seat to at least 3 different supernova going off in M51, and each one was a different flavor of stellar death. We saw one from a star that had already blown off its outer layers, a classic explosion from a red supergiant, and even one from a much rarer yellow supergiant. M51 isn't just a pretty picture, it's a live fire laboratory for astronomy.
All right, for the final stop on our tour, we are heading to the most extreme environments this galaxy has to offer. We're going from its very heart to a system that might just be hiding an unbelievable secret.
Right at the very center of M51, there's a monster, a feeding, supermassive black hole. It's what scientists call an active galactic nucleus. You've got tons of material swirling into it, forming this superheated disk that just blazes with radiation. In pictures from the Hubble telescope, you can actually see this dark X pattern, which is the silhouette of dust lanes being sucked in towards that central engine.
But the galaxy's central black hole isn't the only extreme object around. M51 is also filled with systems like this, an X-ray binary. So this is where you have a dead star, a neutron star, or a small black hole, and it's locked in this tight dance with a massive living star. The dead star's gravity is so strong it just rips gas off its companion, forming a disk that gets so hot it shines incredibly brightly, but in X-rays.
So while astronomers were watching one of these intensely bright sources, they saw something, a tiny flicker, that posed an absolutely incredible question. Could this violent, chaotic system actually be hiding a planet?
Here's what they saw. Using the Chandra X-ray telescope, they watched as the system's bright X-ray light suddenly dipped for a few hours. And really, the best explanation is that something big passed in front of it, blocking the light, something about the size of Saturn. This could be the very first planet ever detected in another galaxy.
Now, I have to be clear, it's still a candidate. It needs to be confirmed, which could take a while. But you can feel the excitement in the community. As one scientist said, to be able to confirm it and discover the first extragalactic planet, well, it would be absolutely fantastic. It just shows how powerful our telescopes have become.
And that leaves us with this final, kind of mind-bending thought. This whole incredible tour, from galactic collisions to hidden spiral arms to stellar fireworks, and now the hint of a world in a whole other galaxy, all of this came from looking at just one beautiful object in the sky. It really makes you wonder, right? How many more worlds are just out there, waiting to be discovered?